I'm Admiral Ellis of the TTO, and welcome back to the Sci-Fi Universe. And today we're going to be talking a lot about this. Not 4 in particular, but Halo in general. And thanks to you who asked. If I remembered, I would say it, but I have bad memory. Spending as much time as I do away from home, I forget things. But yeah, we're not necessarily going to stay on here for too often. If you really want to read up about Halo lore and all that sort of things, you should go to Halo Nation yourself. Up here. There. Whoa, I almost knocked stuff over. But today we're going to be talking a lot about the connection between the Forerunners, which are Halo lore, and the Atlanteans, the Ancients, the Alterans of Stargate lore, and how they're actually the same. There you go. That's the big thing. I'll talk a lot about precursors later because they did a lot of really cool stuff, and they were very, very different than anyone really knows at this point. But whatever you call them, precursors, Magrathians, they were the first civilization to fully inhabit this galaxy. But that's something for another day. What I need to talk about with you guys today is the Forerunners and Halo and everything like that, and how they relate to the Ancients and the Alterans. And I brushed over this a little bit last episode when I was talking about the different kinds of star drives, because the Ancients and Forerunners, same thing. I'm just going to keep calling them the Ancients because that's easy for me. It's easiest for me. That's what I've addressed them. That's what I address them as most of the time, because I'm in the era where the SGC is the primary off-world off-world center, as opposed to, well, we never really get around. Well, we call them the Forerunners when the UNSC comes about, but that's after we lose all our information about the Ancients. In 2204, I've talked about that. If you want me to go back on that, just post a comment in the description, and I'll always go back and tell you about something. Comment in the description. Comment in the comments, not the description. There's going to be an email address in the description where you can send longer questions to me if you want to, more specific stuff. So yes, the precursors had a massive civilization, but then the Forerunners came in on their ships, escaping the war with the Ori, the Forerunners. I'm just going to jump back and forth, whatever seems easiest for me at the time of saying it. Just remember that Forerunners, Ancients, Alterans, Atlanteans are all the same race. Remember that. I think they were addressed as the ones who came before at some point as well, but don't quote me on that. It may have been the Covenant that called them that. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, let's jump onto the main line of what I'm trying to talk about here. The precursors inhabited the galaxy. They had a neural net. Blah blah blah. Talk about that in another episode. It's way too much to cover if we're going to do both in one episode. They had. Forerunners were running from another war to this galaxy. Excuse me, which was, contrary to popular belief, discovered by Destiny, the Alteran starship that was meant to seek out the meaning of life. This was before Ascension was ever thought of, and because of the Ori existing, we have to say that Destiny was not launched from Earth, but launched from the Ori galaxy that the Forerunners originally came from, because they ran away, because it was a schism in their culture between what to do with ascended beings. If you were ascended, can you interfere and act like a god, or can you not do anything? The Ancients wanted to just to be observers, and they put tons of restrictions on them, but the Ori, the people who became the Ori, did not think that, and they started running rampant and basically becoming gods, and that's why they left. So, and the reason the Destiny was abandoned was because Because the ancients then began focusing on ascension as opposed to exploration. So you have to make the logical conclusion that Milky Way was found by the Destiny before ascension became a problem and they had to leave the Ori galaxy. There's a quick snippet on that. So the Forerunners came in. The precursors were in a galactic recession. If you know Hitchhiker's lore, you know that a little bit. The Magrathea had all the money, but they were still a pretty formidable race, and they were very strongly bonded. Oddly enough, so the Forerunners come in, and the precursors immediately retaliate because they've never seen another sentient species in all of their time. They were the first sentient species in the Milky Way, and we populated it basically before any other ones could arise. Where was I? Forerunners come in, the precursors immediately retaliate, so the Forerunners wipe them out. They use a device to interrupt their neural net, and because of some shenanigans that I'll talk about later, they ended up, their DNA base code just kind of fell apart, and they devolved into almost every sentient species that is alive in this galaxy today. And then some. One of the few that were not created by that devolution were the Vogons. They had a fairly... I've talked about them before. They had a fairly swift appearance and then rise to power and then very, very swift decline. They were just kind of there to fill a power void. So yeah, the Forerunners come in with their FTL-powered craft. This predates slipspace drives, and it predates hyperdrives. And they come into this galaxy, and then all of a sudden, they just discovered a new galaxy. They're populating it and everything. They get the idea to explore again, and they send out scout ships to a bunch of different galaxies and a bunch of different planets in the system, which is where they discover people like the Nox and the Asgard, which become part of the 4 races. I don't remember the other one. Sorry, I may have to look it up. I'm going to look it up because I have a Wikipedia right here, sort of. Stargate Wiki. There we go. Alliance of the 4 Great Races. Right. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, the Furlings, right. Okay, back here. The Furlings and the Nox. They were all from different galaxies. They were all very, very, very cool. They all had very advanced technology. One of the things that ended up happening, I covered this in my last one, was slipspace was designed by the Forerunners and used, and they eventually perfected it. But at that point, a more efficient way of well, they made massive ships, and for the Forerunner-Human War, and then the Forerunner Flood War later, they had ships upwards of 100 kilometers long. But when slipspace was perfected, and then they found another way to do it, and using they pioneered the control crystals. If you guys know Stargate lore, you know that everything runs on crystals. And the Forerunners pioneered the control crystals. City ships were actually originally built to be science ships, where one of them that I have in my possession, my flagship, is called Devereaux. It was actually parked and buried on Earth when they relocated the humans here, because they didn't need it anymore. But they pioneered those yellow crystals that they find in... What book? In one of the Halo books, I think First Strike. Halsey finds the yellow Forerunner crystal underneath the mountain where they were training the Spartans or whatever. I don't remember off the top of my head. It warps space and time. They used this crystal to pioneer the control crystals for for the city ships themselves. Well, they worked on crystalline devices originally. All of the systems on Atlantis are made of glass circuits with the circuitry embedded in them. It's very, very cool, and you can add certain elements. It's a very, very, very complicated device. Think of the whole city as one device. And it's all run on crystals. And then they started to do war with crystals. They made 0-point modules to power the cities. Oh, well, they had the control crystals before they had the 0-point modules. They made the control crystals, then they figured out how to make 0-point modules, then they built the city ships to do research further. They made the whatever you gotta call them, the time warping, space warping crystals that Halsey found, one of them. And they actually used those in the creation of the Halo rings and other things like that. There was far from just the one of them that Halsey found on Reach. And in an alternate universe where I'm just going to jump around here for a second. There's an alternate universe out there where the book Leviathan takes place, where what causes that to happen is the world. Well, a couple things. Charles Darwin finds some stuff that he didn't hear, and added to that, the Doctor actually sacrificed himself to completely annihilate the Daleks. They're gone. And to do that safely without damaging the rest of the universe, he actually had to time lock everything for about 100 years. And when that lock wore off, he was dead, so he couldn't fix anything. And that way, he couldn't move the crystal. He couldn't ask the ancient scientists to move the crystal from Devereaux to their outpost on Reach, the planet that we would call Reach. The planet that we would come to call Reach. So it stayed here. Tesla found it and built Goliath with it. Which means, oddly enough, Tesla dug into Devereaux at some point in his lifetime and must have just covered it up because he didn't find anything useful. He found the crystal in that universe. So we have the Forerunners there. But let me get back on track here because we only have about a couple minutes left. There's the slipspace drive. I went over all that yesterday, but eventually when the floods start rising, and the war lasts millions of years. Let me look it up actually, just in case I'm wrong. Forerunner Flood War. It was not that. Nah. The first flood outbreak. I don't think it took that. What's the word? It definitely lasted longer than is written here. Because the original findings of the flood were just scattered in the influences, whatever. But it was just enough that some of the Forerunners decided that this is a threat. We're going to go colonize another galaxy. We're going to, just in case. They decided that this is way too ferocious an enemy, and we may not be able to defeat it. So, abandoning their infinite hubris, they boarded one city ship, Atlantis, and left for the Pegasus Galaxy around 10 million years ago. So you think this war took a goddamn long time. But it wasn't really a war for several million years because it was just scattered outbreaks and they didn't really know what was going on here. But more and more the flood just started consuming things, and then they realized that this is a problem. This is a definite problem, and instead of just trying to confine them, they actively declared war on them. And then they built the Halo rings, and we all know the story from there. And then the Atlanteans were the only ancients left, around 10,000 years ago. They were all wiped out by the Wraith. So if you guys enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, leave a, shoot me an email, admiralellis@gmail.com, in the case of a very long question, and I'll answer them next week.